Hello, so I'm going to be reviewing the book Leave the World Behind by Rumaan. I did not know much about this book before I started it, but I did really enjoy it, so I'm excited to talk about it. This is an interesting book. It's sort of a cross between a couple different genres. The story here is about a couple named Amanda and Clay. They are like a middle-aged white couple with two teenage children named Rose and Archie. And they decide to take a break from their sort of mundane middle-class life in New York and go on a vacation in Long Island. They're staying at a fancy Airbnb home with like access to the pool, and it's a really beautiful area, kind of secluded in nature. And they have a really nice few days of their vacation until things get interrupted when late at night an elderly African-American couple shows up by the name of Ruth and G.H. Washington. And these people say that they are the owners of the home and that there has been a devastating blackout across the East Coast, and now they're kind of just afraid to be in the city and they're seeking refuge, and they ask to stay with Amanda and Clay in the home. So obviously a strange setup. Things are going to get a little bit uncomfortable. Amanda especially is very skeptical about this couple. She doesn't know if she can believe they are who they say they are. And there's a lot of different elements at play. Things definitely take a turn when we start learning more and more about what is actually going on in the world, and the events start to reach our little group here, even in their isolated house. So that's the main premise of the book. So from some of the reviews that I've read of this book, a lot has been made about the writing style. People have some differing opinions on it. It's a very interesting style that sort of took me off guard when I first started reading. The author, Rumaan, he pretty much does this thing where almost every single sentence, whether it's just kind of a throwaway line about what's going on, or if it's a little bit of dialogue between two characters, even if it doesn't seem very important, he goes out of his way to comment on it and sort of analyze every single interaction and thought and moment in the story in a way that sort of relates it to human nature in general, or something deeper about the characters or society and just the way that humans operate. So it's very interesting. Pretty much every little bit of the story is very directly tied to something bigger, and there's a lot of commentary, a lot of analysis, a lot of sort of deep thinking, and I have seen some people describe this book as pretentious. For example, like even if it's just describing like a deer crossing the street or something like that, or the way that Amanda buys her groceries, or puts cheese on a plate, something like that. It's all given this deep analysis that is sometimes more genuine and sincere, and then sometimes a little more snarky. I have seen some people describe this book as pretentious. I actually didn't really have that experience with it. I thought it kind of knew what it was doing, and there is a pretentious, I guess, quality to it, but it also seemed pretty self-aware to me. I don't think this book is pretentious, and I think that the writing is smart enough that it backs up the sort of potentially pretentious vibe that it could have with all the commentary. I never found that it was like saying a lot of nothing. I always thought it had something to say. And I actually really liked the way that it was so like witty and had something deep and interesting to say about all the characters' interactions, because it's actually true, that all these little minute interactions that we have that seem mundane or boring or meaningless, there's a lot of thought behind all of them. Pretty much everything that we say. It sort of reminded me of something that I learned in one of my theater classes once, that the only reason people speak is to get something that they want. Sometimes it's not very apparent, maybe it's not something overt that they want, something right in front of them, but the only reason that we speak is to make something happen, to communicate what we want, to try to move things around, to work towards our goal. And I think that the author understands that, and he had something really interesting to say about pretty much everything that the characters say and do in this book, and he had a lot of insight into their motivations and their flaws and their own perception of the world around them that I found really fascinating. And I also found this book fascinating for other reasons as well. I liked the way that it incorporated contemporary themes. Race is an element in the book. It's not the number one element in the book. I wouldn't say it's really a story about race, but it is an element, and the way that he incorporated it was really interesting. There's a lot about just the way that society functions and the way that we place so much trust and so much faith in these big systems that we often don't even understand, which is very true, and I thought that was really well illuminated in this story. And then this book also, to me, really works narratively as a thriller. There are some scenes that really stressed me out, that were really anxiety-inducing because the writing was so strong. One scene in particular where Archie and Rose go into the woods, I thought was very beautifully written, and there are times that I had to put this book down because it got really stressful to read. And I would say that's definitely a testament to the writing and the way that the author understands how to deliver a thriller, even one that isn't as typical as standard, and it's not following the typical formula of a thriller where there's like a bad guy and a clear threat or a villain. And this book is also very disturbing in many ways. I think it will leave you feeling stressed out, but it also it's not graphic or bloody. There's nothing overtly gratuitous or disturbing. So I think that's really great writing if it can affect you like that without showing anything overtly disturbing or over the top. Another thing that I wanted to say about this book is that there are times when it does veer into that sort of cynicism that you see in other books like this. I think it's kind of a popular thing to comment on like the typical like white middle-class family, especially the mother. I think usually takes the brunt of the beating here, but it's sort of a thing to comment on those families and sort of like pick them apart and expose the ways in which they're hypocritical or in which they are bad people or something like that. I know Little Fires Everywhere is a very popular book, and it sort of did this. There are times when this book veers into that territory, but ultimately I think it has a lot more to say than that. I don't think this book is interested in just throwing people on the page and saying, look how bad they are, look how much they fail at what they want to be. That's not really what I took away from this book. Some people may take that away from it, but I thought it actually was sort of optimistic in a way, and there's a lot of beautiful and pure and authentic elements of this book. And one of the main themes, and I think maybe the number one theme, is unconditional love and the way that parenthood changes you. And that's something that unites all people and that all people can relate to, is this desperation to want to save the people that they love, which obviously is a positive and really beautiful and sincere theme of the book. So I did notice some cynicism, and I saw one review that described the author as sneering at his characters, and there's a little bit of that, but I honestly, if anything, I thought it was a more honest depiction of the way people are, and there is a lot to sneer at. If you were in someone's brain, there's a lot you would make fun of and maybe ridicule, but I thought it was a fair and honest depiction of human beings and how flawed we are. But it was a really powerful book, so I really liked Leave the World Behind. I definitely recommend it. It is very weird. I will say, as far as genres go, it's really hard to place it. I know I described it as a thriller earlier. That would be because of the pacing and because of the anxiety that I think it will give you as a reader. But if anything, it's more of like a apocalyptic drama. I'm not really sure, but it's an awesome book. I really liked this book. I also liked that it was different and that it challenged me as a reader, and it felt unique compared to a lot of things that I've read. So definitely recommend Leave the World Behind. But again, there are some mixed reviews on this one, so please let me know what you think. But yeah, that is my review of Leave the World Behind.